I'm going to show you all how to program realistic MIDI bass using a sample library. I'm going to be using Bass 2. You can apply these methods to whatever bass sample library you're using. This is just the one that I chose to use today. It's actually the only one I have. And, we're going to get a little in depth with this. I'm not going to make this video take forever, but, there's a lot of bass programming tutorials out there. And, a lot of them, there's some key points that they miss, in my opinion, to really making these libraries sound realistic. So I'm going to jump right in. And as you can see, I got Bass 2 opened. And the first thing I want to talk about is if we want the most realistic MIDI bass possible, we are going to want to use the DI signal. And I'm going to do a quick demonstration, kind of showing you why we would want to do that. So I'm just going to play a little bit of the MIDI bass that I have right here with the dirt channel on this program. It's a pre-processed tone. So let's just hear how that sounds. Okay, it sounds great. It sounds really cool. But to my ears, it sounds a bit choppy. And that is because these samples were already pre-processed. This processing is not happening in real time. It's not going through an amp or an amp sim in real time. So when we turn off the amp and we just hear the DI, it sounds smoother to my ears. So, if we want the optimal, most realistic bass possible, we're going to want to use the DI. However, if you don't know how to process your own DI, you can switch over to a clean channel if your sample library has that, and that's going to sound pretty good. So, for this video, we are going to stick with the clean channel. And I'm just gonna, I already programmed this out. This is not gonna be a MIDI programming tutorial. I'm just gonna dive into what I have programmed and show you all. Actually, before I do that, let's hear how it sounds in the context of a mix. This is a song called Freefall off an EP I recently put out. And I took out the bass and I replaced it with MIDI. So let's hear how that sounds in the context of a mix.
Time is like a crazy nightmare in my head. There's nothing that I can do. The days are going by so slow. My heart has been ripped in three. I need some salvation. I'm broken and bleeding. I don't know what lies ahead, but this night is real.
So if I did not tell you that was a MIDI bass, I highly doubt that most of you would realize that. Again, we're using the clean channel, so this would probably sound a bit more realistic if I processed the DI. I'm not doing that, like I said, for the sake of time and simplicity. We're going to use the clean channel. And let's just dive into, the steps that I took. So probably the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to humanize the velocities. And one of the easiest things to do is to add accents. Now, I guess the bass playing I have at 100 as far as the velocities, and then for accents, I bump it up to 127. And when you add those accents, that's when, it starts coming alive a little bit. It doesn't sound as robotic and stiff. And how I add these, well, I'm a bassist, so I kind of understand my own playing, but we can take a look at a DI track that I have right here of this song and kind of study the waveform. So like right here, this I would put an accent, and I believe I did in the MIDI. So where these spikes in the DI, that's where we would want to put those accents. You know, you don't need a DI to do this. Just looking at a DI is very helpful to reference, you know, any bass DI, because it helps you study how an actual bassist plays. And after that, we're going to want to add drops in velocity. So kind of like right here, the size of the wave kind of drops down a bit. And that's what you would want to do. So looking at the MIDI I have here, let's see, so kind of like right here, we got some drops going on. Oh, let me get this DI off. Let's solo the MIDI. So that also helps. I could potentially make some more distinct drops if I really wanted to. This is something that I kind of just put together in a reasonable amount of time. And, you know, usually those drops in velocities are going to happen when there's more constant, faster playing. The faster you're playing the bass, the less likely you're going to be able to, you know, continue play very hard. For me, usually the beginning of, you know, a faster passage, I might like accent the first hit and maybe a random hit in there, and then maybe another random hit will drop down. But for the most part, the faster you're playing, the lower you want the velocities. As far as adjusting the velocities, that's really it. There's accents. Oftentimes, you know, at the beginning of a measure, depending on who the bass player is, that's how I play, just by default. Faster passages, lower velocities, random drops, random accents. You want to add these in there. That's what's going to make this sound convincing. And from there, we're going to want to add the articulation. Now, hopefully you have a library that you can add articulation in, and if you can't, that's totally fine. But for this, let me pop up Eurobase. If you look right here, the key switch info, it's telling me what kind of articulation is being played. So for this part right here, there's hammer-ons and pull-offs, and I have those programmed here, and you're going to watch this switch in real time. And, you know, that is a way to further add realism to this bass library and any bass library. The other thing I want to mention, this is kind of particular to the submission audio libraries, I would say. The higher you start going on the notes, the quieter you want the velocities to be. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, the higher you're going on this bass library, or the bass libraries in general, as far as it goes for Eurobase 2, Gin bass, and Punk bass, they just start not sounding as realistic. So that's why I have the velocities fairly quiet here, but I do have like an accent right there. And isolated, it doesn't necessarily sound the most realistic, but in the mix, you're not going to hear that, which is all that we really care about. So yeah, a general rule with these libraries, if you stay lower, they're going to sound more realistic. Because like I said, when you start going up here, not as realistic, but when we're over here, that sounds pretty good to me. And that's not even processing the DI, that's the pre-processed tracks, like I've mentioned. And I'm going to go over here. This is kind of like the breakdowny area of the song. And right here, I have programmed a slide, which actually sounds really good. There we go. That actually sounds really good. Pretty close to what I actually played in the song. That was a DI. That's a sample. That sounds pretty good to me. And here, and like right here, this is really where these libraries, or a lot of bass libraries, they really excel in the lower register. And I'm just going to show you how it would sound with the DI, how much smoother. Probably won't be as noticeable because the clean does sound pretty good, but To my ears, that sounds more realistic. So keep that in mind. If you have the ability to process the DI, you're going to want to do that. It's just going to come out better. But, if you don't have the option to do that, the clean does sound really good in the mix. Let's play this section all together. Let me mute the DI. You can't tell. You cannot tell that is a programmed bass. You can't. 99% of people would not be able to tell. And if you really want to play it safe, you can always turn this tone knob down. The less top end in these libraries, and probably all bass libraries in general, the more realistic it's going to sound. And I mean, it kind of gives you a beefier low end. Like, that sounds really, really good to me. So I think the last thing I just want to bring up, I didn't really do it. Maybe I did do it. We want to adjust the timing. That's another thing that a lot of people, they really miss out on adding just that extra little bit of realism. We're going to just take the easy route just for this demonstration, but my bass playing for this song was a little bit behind. I think it was a little bit more behind with the guitars. Wasn't that noticeable. But if I were to use this plugin, if I were to program bass for a song, what I would do is I would adjust the bass timing to be pretty much with the guitars, maybe a little bit behind or a little bit ahead, just so there's a little bit of offset. And I really think that is a nice little touch to bring the realism up just that little bit more. But for this, we're just going to take a shortcut. We're going to go humanize, and we're going to go pretty realistic, and we'll go 30 milliseconds. We'll make everything a little bit late. The latest it's going to be is 30 milliseconds. So I'm going to click OK, and let's see how that sounds. Let's play it from right here. I mean, that sounds pretty good to me. Fairly convincing. I want to also add, I could have went in and adjust the velocities a little bit more, make a little bit more inconsistent playing. Just subtly, not making, it sound like it's a really inconsistent bassist, but we do have to add some inconsistencies to make this sound real. And also, processing the DI would make it also sound a lot more realistic. I'm gonna bring it up one more time, just so you can hear the difference. Again, we're gonna do the dirt channel because it's easiest to hear the choppiness of the pre-processed tones on this channel in particular. And now to the DI. It sounds a lot more realistic to me. In my opinion, it sounds like a edited bass performance, and that's modern music. I mean, we edit it, and that's totally fine. We edit everything. And knowing that is kind of why I think these libraries are totally viable. So my final thoughts on this whole process, I would, I guess I'm going to recap on everything. You're going to want to process the DI. You're going to want to adjust those velocities, add accents, add random, dips in the playing, little inconsistencies. The faster you're playing, the faster the bass is playing, the quieter the velocities are going to be. Make sure you're adding articulations, adjust the timing, and, don't be lazy. Take your time with this. It is a bit of a tedious process, but if you want this to sound real, if you have no other option, or, you've got a bad bass, or, you have difficulty recording bass, because, once you start getting it to like to drop A with bass, it's very, very difficult to even tell when it's in tune. So it's a tedious process. It's totally worth taking your time. Study a DI track if you can, get your hands on one. And yeah, that's really it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. Let me know if it was helpful, because there's videos on programming realistic bass, and I think, there's gaps. Like, nobody talks about looking at the DI. Nobody talks about accents, or, the random times when, a note drops, it's a little bit quieter, and stuff like that. And, even adjusting the timing. I haven't seen any tutorials. They might be out there, but nothing that's been, remotely popular. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you enjoyed it, and I look forward to hearing from you all.
You're not perfect. It's all inside your head. You think you're such a saint, 'cause you fall for that.